Namaste, my name is Deepak Shimkhada. I'm a professor of art history, religious studies, and cultural studies, as well as South Asian philosophies.
Nice. So let's kick off today's podcast with a favorite art piece from Nepal that you really like. Can you describe the work of art? And also, can you say why you find it compelling? How might it exemplify your broader interest in art from Nepal?
There are many pieces of art in Nepal. Of course, I like all of them. Otherwise, I will not be in this field. But there is one particular art that I like very much, which I discovered uh, recently in the sense that it was, I discovered it in 1970 through the grace of the late Chandraman Maske, who was, I suppose, a director of Department of Archaeology of Nepal, and he was my teacher, art teacher, and when he found out that I was trying to go to America to study art history, and he brought it to my attention that there is a mural painting in Hanuman Dhoka which no one knows about, and he too discovered quite by surprise after the 1934 big earthquake when the Hanuman Dhoka palace, much of the structure was damaged, and then he, as a director, he went to survey some of the buildings, and then he found these paintings on the walls of one bedroom. And this painting is obviously uh, what we call mural painting, wall painting. And this painting is about Chandi, the Devi Mahatmya. All the stories is narrated, in a continuous sequence. So that painting, I especially one sequence that represents the birth of Durga, which is fascinating because I have, as a religious studies major, I have studied Devi Mahatmya many times. In fact, in one of my courses, I had used Devi Mahatmya, so I have, read it many times. And then when I compared the text with the image, there are certain um, innovations, so to say, that Nepalese artists have introduced, which I found quite interesting. For example, in the text, all the male gods got together and then they gave their powers to create this goddess, very powerful goddess called Durga. But in that painting, there are two female goddesses. That means there are goddesses in there, female entities. And I said, how it is possible, to have these goddesses in a painting where in the text there is no mention of goddesses. Only the male gods come together to create Durga. So that I found quite interesting, and I have provided my own explanation in one of the lectures why it may be so.
So, why is it?
That's a long story,
Uh,
because Nepal is a land of the goddess, and I think the energy rests within the goddess, and when you are creating a goddess, which is energy itself, it is necessary to have the Durgas, the Devi Sakti, among the gods, because the gods, male gods, without the presence of female goddess, which is energy, the gods have no power. So that is why it is required to have the presence of the energy, the goddess, in the painting. I think that's what the Nepali theologians, perhaps a Nepali artist, must have understood why they should include, the goddess in the painting.
so, how and why did You first become interested in art and art history, and how did you become interested in Nepalese art? Is there a story you might tell?
Yes, well, I was first. I went to India to study fine arts, like a studio art, painting, and graphics. And while I was in Baroda, I also took several art history courses. And then after I finished my BFA, Bachelor's of Fine Arts in painting and graphics, I got interested in art history. So I kind of divorced the fine arts and went into theory and art history, philosophy, and things like that. And then I did a master's in art criticism. I was the first person to do a degree in art criticism, and then after that, then I have changed my course from painting and graphics to art history.
So, how does your experience as an artist influence your work as an art historian, and vice versa? How does art history inform your work as an artist?
Well, they are, intimately connected. Without the art, there is no art history. Again, there is art, there is art history. So it is very interconnected. And so it's like the question is, chicken or the eggs. So which came first? I think the first came the artwork itself, and then there came the history and how it was created, who created it, and what is the significance and all that.
So, for you, how do you describe Nepalese art and heritage? How far back historically does it, in terms of what art historians know, it goes back? And how might you describe some of the characteristics or qualities of Nepalese art, visually and thematically? What makes Nepalese art unique?
Well, the history of Nepalese art is as well as the history of Nepal's history. We do not have a recorded history prior to Lichhabi period, and from the Lichhabi period we have from Manadeva period, fourth, fifth century, we have three Bikrama, a statue relief, uh, so that is there, and after that, then we begin to have several pieces of art. This is all religious art. In the beginning, all art is in the service of religion. So it depicts the various stories of gods and goddesses. So this is the Bikrama. Three Bikrama is about the Vishnu's taking 3 steps and covering the entire universe. So it is about that. So going back to the Lichhavi period, so we can trace the history there. Prior to that, of course, there are again many now archaeological archaeologists have now dug some works, perhaps of dating back even prior to that. But when you talk about the recorded history, so that is the dated, and it has definitely from the Manadeva period. So we can begin from the Lichhabi period.
But there are artworks that go further back than Lichavi period.
I'm sure it
Mm.
goes back. There are a lot of archaeological pieces that have been found that go back to as early as perhaps 2, 3 second century, first century CE.
So, but how do you classify Nepalese art thematically? Is
Uh,
there an approach to thematically classify Nepalese art?
well, when you have a lot of pieces of artworks, then you put them in categories. Religious art, again, whether it is Hinduism, Buddhism, and within Hinduism, whether it's a Saivite, inspired by the Saivism, or or the Vaishnavism, Vaishnava cult. So that's how we classify. So those are all religious pieces of art in the beginning.
So, can we say the ancient or primeval Nepalese art? It's unique because it's more religious and it's more dedicated to gods.
Yes, yes, yes. They're all dedicated to to religion. The expressions of religions. without which you have no art. The foundation of Nepali art, of any Hindu art, Buddhist art, is the religion.
So, regarding contemporary Nepalese art, what are some of the characteristics you might see? Is there a global influence in the modern art of Nepal?
Well, even the modern artists have used some religious themes. There was a period, I myself, when I was a painting, and I used to dabble with reinterpreting tantra. What they call in India too. There was a phase where many great artists have used tantric symbols to illustrate various philosophies of Hinduism through tantric motifs, tantric images. So I too was inspired by tantric cult, and I have done quite a few paintings with the tantric symbols. So even a modern artist, are going back to their cultural heritage, um, and then you using say various religious symbols to express their ideas, their forms.
Right. So, from your perspective, what might the future look like for Nepalese art and maybe separately for Nepalese heritage?
Well, it's hard to say, what type of new crop will emerge. I mean, this is a globalization, global period. I can see a lot of, new images with surrealism type of, art, the dreamy quality, like a science fiction, various motives. So they're all inspired by various images, fantastic images. So I can see that. Um, so it's a combination of various types of motifs that they are combining and synthesizing. The science is the frontier. So I'm sure they will be combining certain um, images, beyond this universe, beyond our own planet. I will not be surprised if I see some of those images, because art is an expression of inner emotions, your fantasy, your creative exploration. So sky, what they call sky is the limit. That's what the new artists will be doing with their images.
As you mentioned in your book, Nepal to California, A Life of Adventures and Memories, the memories of one's hometown are etched forever in the mind of every child. Please share a memory of your childhood that is really interesting.
I have a lot of fond memories of my village, where I was born and grew up, and I didn't leave my village until about 10 years old. So within that 10 years, I had nothing else to do in the village. There was no school, so I did not attend any school. So I was a running brat, everywhere in the field, and climbing trees and climbing hills, and I have got a lot of broken scratches, and then you know, um, you know, scratches all over my body. I remember one memorable thing that in my village there was a water mill, and I found that to be quite exciting. That was local technology at that time. Water mill. People will take their grains, wheat, corn, to be ground, to be milled, and I used to watch from the bottom, how the propellers wheel, operated, and then when they were not using it, they would turn the water, and then at that time I could see the entire, the structure, how it was built, and then I would then copy a miniature size of the water mill, and then I tried it on my own, and it worked, and I was so kind of excited. Hey, I'm going to be a scientist, I'm going to be an engineer. But that kind of curiosity did not pan out later. as I grew older, and then I got interested in art and instead of technology.
So, was there any point in your life when you decided to take a different career trajectory? And if so, please tell a brief story about it. And I think it was the perfect segue for this question.
Yes, definitely. Then when I graduated from high school, I got a job in Singadarbar as an artist, and it was in the Department of Agriculture. The director somehow liked me. He liked my work, and I was a young man. And then at that time, this was during the 60s. Uh, he needed. It was a time of development. There were a lot of money coming in from foreign countries, especially from America. The whole Department of Agriculture was associated with, with a lot of experts, consultants coming from America. They're training new agriculturists in horticulture and all that. Many different fisheries, many different departments, and my director said, and if you want to study agriculture, we need a lot of graduates, and then immediately when you pass, then I will give you a job right here in the Department of Agriculture. And then there used to be what you call Colombo plan, and then this plan, that plan, and then they were sending out like 20 to 30 students to India, to Colombo, and then to the Philippines, and also to America, many different places. And he said, well, let's start from India first. You do BA, BS, and then when you come back and you work for a couple of years, and then you might be able to go to America for your MS. And then well, next month there is an interview coming up, so you apply for this fellowship, and I will be on the committee, so you are definitely going to get it. And then he forced me to apply for the scholarship, and by force, I did apply. But then later on, then I got a cold feet, and I didn't want to study agriculture, because that's not where my heart was. And then on the day of the interview, I simply did not show up, and my director got so mad. He said, "No, you did not show up. Oh, what's the reason? You are a fool, because this is such a good opportunity for you to go to India to study agriculture." So that was one big break I had. I would be a different person today. I don't know, but then I simply decided not to apply, because I followed my heart. My heart was for art, and so that was a big change in my life.
But then you eventually made your way to India.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Then the following year, then again there was another scholarship. The whole, and then I saw, cultural cultural program given by government of India for other humanities fields, art, and then I did apply, and then of course I was selected, and I went to India. Then again I told my director, thank you for inspiring me to go to India, but now finally found, the scholarship for which, where my heart is. So that's the big, kind of change in my life.
So tell us about your departure from Nepal. First to University of Baroda to study fine arts, and then to the United States. What was the journey like?
It was a very smooth journey in a sense, because Baroda is located near Bombay. It's a kind of border of Gujarat and Maharashtra. So I used to go to Bombay every weekend. So I was really exposed to Western traditions, and our School of Fine Arts was avant-garde school. Pretty much a westernized school. Many visiting artists would come from America, and then uh, all the artists were experimenting with modern art, abstract. So I was pretty much exposed to, introduced to Western art traditions and all that. So after I finished my BA in fine arts, I went into art criticism, and then after that, then the following year, the year I went back to Nepal, I was hired by the University of Tribhuvan University to develop courses for new School of Fine Arts in Nepal. So I spent a year preparing syllabi and whole program, and then after that, then of course, I received a Fulbright grant in 1972. So there was only 1 year I passed MA, MFA from Baroda in 1970. So I returned to Nepal in 1971, and then in 1972 I immediately came to America. So I have been away from Nepal from 1962, all the way 2024.
Wow. So yeah, looking back, how would you describe some of the turning points of your career?
These are all turning points. Now you see, going to going to India was a first turning point because I would have been something else. I would have been an agriculturist, maybe someone else, maybe having a job in Singha and spend my life there. I went to India, so that changed my life. Then again, I came to America and never went back, and I stayed here, and of course got my job. So this is all turning points in my life. Living Dwarka, my village, was a turning point. Coming to Kathmandu, from Kathmandu to going to India was another turning point. From India coming to America was my last phase of my turning point.
So you have written numerous books, but I personally like the story of your recently edited publication Le Nepal, which is seminal to understanding Nepalese history. It would be intriguing for the audience to know how the recent English version of the book came about.
Well, I was in University of Chicago, graduate student. I was writing a research paper in Nepali art, and every book or every article that I would read, it would have a reference, a citation for Le Nepal by Sylvain Levy. And well, I said I have to read this book because everyone talks about Sylvain Levy, Le Nepal, right? So then, fortunately, our library had Sylvain Levy's book because it came in 3 volumes: Volume 1, Volume 2, and Volume 3. So all the 3 volumes were there, but they're all written in French. And of course, I was not fluent in French, even though I had 2 years of French, because as a PhD student in the humanities, you have to you have to know at least 3 foreign languages. So I took French instead, and just to pass the language requirement. So I barely passed to fulfill the requirement. So it would take me a long time, with the help of a dictionary, to read 1 page of text. So it was really frustrating. So I was hoping that someone would have translated that book, but no one did. So, and then of course I came to Claremont in 1982, and in 1982, the year Gandhi movie was released, and then my family and I went to see that movie in a theater. And while we were waiting to get into the theater, and we met an elderly couple with silver hair, quite a distinguished couple, and they came to greet us in Hindi, Namaste, Kaise ho, and all that. And then I was surprised. Here are two, white individuals, greeting me in Hindi, And then I was fascinated, and then we came to know that the gentleman was a British born in India in 1900.
Wow.
Uh, and then, of course, he was born and raised there, and he went to school there, and so forth. So finally, he came to America to study, and then he fell in love with another woman whom he had as his wife, Mary, and they got married, and then they were teaching here in Claremont, where I was teaching, where I was a student here at that time. And then we got to know each other, and then I got their phone number, and then I went to their home because they lived very close by. And then the Mary told me that she was a French teacher, uh, and now she's retired, and she's very bored, and nothing else to do. And then my light clicked in my head. All right, if that is the case, all right, Mary, I have just the job for you. I have got the Sylvan Levy's Le Nepal book. Would you mind translating it into English? And she kindly accepted my offer, but she didn't know that the book was very thick, something like 300 pages. Who translated the book into English, and then I became the editor and annotator because there are certain things she did not know because she was not a Nepali, and she would ask me questions about certain terms, certain words, and then I would explain that to her, and that's how the whole project began, and it took more than a year for her to translate 2 volumes. The third volume we did not translate because that was a collection of what they call stone inscriptions, the facsimile of stone inscription. So we left that alone because it's a technical book, technical topic. So let the experts deal with that. So we just translated volume 1 and volume 2. So it has a wealth of information about Nepal's art, culture, religion, history, geography, everything. So it's a wonderful book, and it is out now in English. It is published from America, as well as there's a Nepali edition published in Nepal by Mandala Book Point. So you can buy a book either in America or in Nepal.
Okay. So, what was the most surprising or unexpected discovery you have made by devoting a career studying Nepalese art and heritage?
Um, it has a deep, uh, a history in the sense that even though it has many similarities with the Indian art and culture, and also with the Tibet.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, it has its own unique character that makes Nepalese art, which is Newari artists have, you know, uh, invented or discovered their own vernacular, their own expression, their own signature in Nepali art. The moment you see it, I said, well, you cannot fool me. This is definitely Nepali, because it has its own character. You can see it through either through line or through facial features, through various accoutrements, the dress, the jewelry, the crown, everything that they're wearing, and you can definitely tell. At the same time, the Newar artists also have kind of synthesized, their own expression, their own personality. That's why it is unique, and I find it quite interesting to study Nepali art.
So, what are you working on right now?
I'm right now, working on a manuscript that I discovered in uh, Vandarkar Oriental Research Institute in Pune.
Mm-hmm.
It used to be called Pune, but now they call it Pune. In 1979, when I was a AIS grantees, I had received a fellowship to do research on my dissertation. So I went to India for 6 months, and then I went to Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute to photograph these manuscripts. And in the process, I got this manuscript called Bhagavata Purana manuscript, which is dated 1648, and it was painted in Mewar, Rajasthan, and it was brought back to Maharashtra, Pune, in the 1900s, and it was kept there for many years. And it has the manuscript is a big size, over it's a folio, oversized manuscript, and it has 129 illustrations. Pages are painted, the various scenes, various stories from the Bhagavad Purana, and it's a fascinating manuscript, and painted by the best artist of the time of the Mughal, court. There are some of the artists who have worked for Akbar and for Jahangir, who have also worked for this manuscript. This was a royal commission by a Maharaja of Mewar, and because of that, this manuscript is a royal manuscript and a very huge size, wonderfully painted, fully painted. So I have all the 129 paintings, illustrations, pictures of the manuscripts. Unfortunately, that manuscript was destroyed in 2004 by hooligans, by vandals. So I now have the paintings, pictures, but the manuscript is gone.
Oh, that's
So
sad.
I'm working on them, describing the paintings and also highlighting their possible meanings and all that.
What do you enjoy most about your work, and what keeps you passionate about art and cultural heritage?
Okay, it's history. How it got painted, it got created, and who created it, and what are the forces behind it. That's basically what makes it interesting.
What is the importance of a guru in one's life? In your autobiography, you mentioned about Dev Doz Nakarmi and Pratapadityapal, among others. How have their roles in your life impacted your career?
I think guru is always that one who gives you directions, one who gives you the knowledge, the skill, gives you insight, technique, how to do things, how to look at things. Devdhoz was an artist, very consummate artist, and he was a wonderful hand to draw images, uh, you know, and he would show me how to create a shade, how to create the hats, the mark, how to diffuse light and shadow, and all of that, which I later on discovered when I was studying in India. Spumato, the Italian technique of creating like a smoke. Some of the artists knew how to create that, so that you can create a very subtle light and shadow, subtle tone. So that kind of thing, I'm sure that those had never studied, Italian art, but still he knew how to create that kind of effect. So he taught me some of those techniques, and then of course Pratapadityapal, he's a great scholar of Himalayan art, especially Nepali art. He has written many books, and so I chose him to study under him. That's why when I was awarded Fulbright fellowship, the Fulbright Commission already placed me with three universities. One was University of Pennsylvania, at that where Stella Cranbridge great scholar of Indian art, who was teaching, and then of course at UCLA, Davidson was also teaching. Another great scholar, and then Pratapaditta Paul was um, curator of Los Angeles County Museum of Art, and he was also teaching part-time at Southern California University, University of Southern California. So I chose him because of his expertise in Himalayan art. So I went to the Fulbright Commission and I told them, please do not send me to any of these universities, three universities. The third one I forgot to tell you, that was University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, where Walter Spink, uh, the famous art historian, was teaching. So I decided to come to Los Angeles and to study art under Paul, and then I finally got it, and that's how I landed in Los Angeles in 1972. I did my master's. The only disadvantage of coming here was that the USC did not have a PhD program in art history at that time. So again, I had to do a second master's in art history. And because it did not have a PhD degree, so then I went to University of Chicago, for further studies. So this is a whole long, trajectory. This kind of a journey. But again, along the journey, I learned many things. I do not regret, losing my time, losing, not gaining what I wanted, but again, gaining a lot of experience, new experience, making a lot of contacts, making friends. And while I was, with Paul, and he introduced me to some of the, Hollywood celebrities, some big art collectors. I have been to many great collectors' home and seen their artworks, and also have, later benefited from their relationship, and so on and so forth, which I don't want to go into detail. They used to invite me for appraising, work of art, and then of course getting paid, and all that. So, so that the teacher can always, be a guide, be helpful. Even today, after many years, after 1970, between 72 and 74, 75, I was in LA. Then I went to Chicago and then Ohio State. And finally, I came back to Claremont in 1982. And ever since, I have been in touch with Dr. Paul, and he's still alive, and I have been in touch with him. So we still do some projects, we discuss and things like that. So yes, there is a definitely benefit having a relationship with a guru and shishya.
So, what is the definition of art according to you?
Well, I have no definition. What art is, self-expression, right? What you feel, and if you can reproduce in images, that is art, whatever that may be. Um, Anything that you cannot express, and if you can express through images, and that is art.
So, why is art necessary for human species?
Art is a tool to express your inner emotions, whatever that may be, happiness, sadness, or any rage, you know, uh, any celebrations, anything, any form of emotions, you could express through art. So that's my definition.
So, the last question now. If you could host a dinner party with any three historical or contemporary figures related to Nepalese history, who would you invite and what would you serve?
That's a fascinating question, and also very difficult one. Okay, let me see. You said three, right?
You're right.
Okay, then I will choose um, all three from history. One is um, Princess Brikuti. Number two would be Aroniko, both of them artists. All right. And I will tell you why I chose these two artists. And the third one, I would choose um, uh, Janga Bahadur Rana because he is a pivotal figure in Nepalese history for Nepal. What he did has really changed Nepal, and and he was also, I think, a brilliant man from what I have studied about him because I recently edited a book written by my friend. So I know quite a bit about him now after reading his book. Briquette is instrumental because as early as the 7th century, CE, she was a princess, and she was married to a Tibetan king Sonson Gampo, and he was a very uh, famous king and very powerful king, and then through her, Buddhism was introduced, and it is also said that she also introduced Newari art to Tibet. She took with her many images of Buddhas, especially one, the Akshobhya Buddha, um, and then that was taken there, and then they eventually made a shrine, a temple. Jokhang temple is actually was built in order to house the the statue that Briguti took with her. So because of that, she was instrumental in introducing Nepali art or Newari art to Tibet, and so that's the reason. And of course, the second one is Arneko, is another famous artist who was already consummate artist in Kathmandu, and he went to Tibet with 80 craftsmen with him to build. He was an architect apparently, with the construction crew and all the craftsmen, and to build a pagoda, a temple, and then from there he went on to China, and of course at that time you were a Yuan period in China. The 13th century, Kublai Khan was the most powerful emperor in China, and he was ruling there, and then he was invited and he was employed by him in his court, and he is also known for painting his portrait and also his wife's portrait. So of course he also built a white pagoda, white temple there in Beijing, which is still standing today. Um, because of these three figures, I think that sums up. They're all interesting people to our artist, and one is Jang Bahadur, is a ruler, is a kind of strategist, political, and he was also the first Nepal that who went to Europe, went to England, and then went to France, and he had some love affairs. It has been said with French as well as with the English women. So he was a pretty interesting figure for that matter, and also also he also wrote. Was instrumental in coming up with the Mulki Ain. That's one thing, and also he was also the one who changed from Thapa to Rana, and then established a Rana dynasty after him, all his brothers and everyone else. So because of that, I think he changed the history of Nepal, and also in some of the games that he played with the British is quite interesting that we can see. Um, and I actually, if you have time, I would like to spend just the 1 minute of your time to indicate I actually do not have that painting with me, but I do have a photograph of that painting, I was asked to write, um, or rather, identify the painting. It was a collector's, very famous collectors in Pasadena, and it is a historical painting. You know what happened in Sogoli, the treaty, 1818, what is it, 1818 or 1816, the Sogoli Treaty. After that, every 10 years they have to be ratified, and then the later on, um, it was the delegation was sent um, to Calcutta to ratify the treaty with Nepalese demands, versions, making changes here and there and all that. No, of course, the British did not like that treaty, and they didn't want to sign it. So, in order to please the king, uh, I think the Rajendra Bir Bikram Saha was the king who had sent the delegation, and so the British government uh, sent a lot of gifts, topas gifts, to please the king. Okay, here are the gifts, but we do not want to sign the treaty, but instead please accept our gifts. And these are the gifts. And then the gifts, there's a whole long list of gifts, and then one of them is the clock that sits on a mantle or on a table, the clock. All right, and I found the same clock in a painting in the Darbar where Rajendra Bir Bikram Shah is seated, surrounded by Vimsan Thapa, Matbar Fingsap Thapa, and few other important figures of the time. So I think that's a very historical painting, and I was able to, with the information that I had read and did some research, reading books, history books, and this and that. So that was a very satisfying research that I had done, and I was actually going to write a paper on that. So those are some discoveries. Along the way, some nice surprises you get to see. Many of these gems are hidden in collectors' rooms, collectors' collections. Many of these paintings are scattered everywhere, and once upon a time you get lucky, to stumble upon such gems.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.